Hey there, everybody. Today is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. So, happy January 22nd, 2023. Today we're going over John chapter 5. Again, this is basically, making these mostly for the youth group at Heart Cry Church, but feel free to share with, parents, friends, teachers, whoever you think might get a little bit out of this. So again, just my big encouragement for you guys is just to get in your Bibles each and every day. So that's what I'm doing, chapter a day. We're going all the way through John. This is day 5, John chapter 5. So we're going to go ahead and dive on in. Again, I'll start with, hey, if you haven't read John chapter 5 yet, hit pause on this, go back, read John chapter 5, and then come on back. I always kind of give like the song that I've been kind of singing or had in my head or whatever, and it's The Healing by Blanca and Dante Bowie, I believe, or Bowe. And anyway, just it's funny because I've had a couple of the youth group guys talk to me about just they don't have like that feeling about that. I don't know if I don't feel that God's close right now, and just some of the lyrics in that is, God, you're so much more than just a feeling. You're my healing. You're healing me, right? And I think and I've definitely been like this, where you kind of maybe you're going through life and you think well, I'm good. I don't really need God, or I don't need more of God. I've got enough God right in my life, so I'm good. We don't realize. I mean, honestly, it's kind of we live in such a sin-filled world that we don't realize maybe how bad things are, or I've kind of heard when we have our sin nature, we kind of have this bent, this twisted nature to us, and we've always been if you ever heard the phrase, pigs don't know pigs stink, right? Because they're always in a pig pen, right? They're always covered in pig poo-poo and a pig pen and slop and all this stuff. Pigs have no idea that they stink, that their neighbors stink, that their mom, their dad, their brothers and sisters all stink, because they grew up in it. That's all they've ever known, right? So sometimes that's kind of us, where maybe we don't think we need God's healing, but we do. Even if you don't have a physical malady or something, you probably got something up here or in your heart, right, that needs some sort of a healing. So here we are at the healing of the pool in John chapter 5. So it's just pretty cool. One thing I had never really known about this, I think it was until Pastor Billy said it in one of his sermons, is basically, and it doesn't really talk about it too much here in the text, but basically the pool that this guy is at, he's been an invalid for 38 years, and he's basically been paralyzed for 38 years. This pool is it's definitely not biblical. So basically, even before Jesus came, people, we should look to God. People in the Old Testament, should look to God for a healing. But instead, I think with the superstition was there's this big pool, and once a day or something, some bubbles would bubble up out of it, and they thought that it was angels or something. And so as soon as bubbles start popping up, this whole rush of people would try to get into the water. You can kind of get that by verse 7, where Jesus asks him, hey, do you want to get well? And he says, sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Right? So right there's there's a whole bunch of people there trying to get healed, and as soon as bubbles come up, and it's just a lot of superstition, right? And so then here comes Jesus, the actual Son of God, the King of the universe, who does have the power to heal him, and does. So also just kind of one thing, just note, it's just the phrasing, at least that my Bible has, they call him an invalid, right? So invalid, and just kind of gives you the sense that his legs didn't work, but then his head, his heart, his soul maybe was missing something, right? Maybe he felt invalid or not valid, right? Nobody cared about him at all. So he not only could he, especially, I even just imagine today. It's people feel like that today, I'm sure. Just in the day we live in, with wheelchairs and things like that, and so many different medications to help people, that's awesome. Just I couldn't even imagine that today, but even 2,000 years ago or more, just it just had been rough. So anyway, so that guy, being an invalid for 38 years, I haven't even been alive for 38 years. That's just crazy. Anyway, we're moving on. So I love the fact that just Jesus asks him the question, do you want to get well? Right? Because I think there's even people today who, again, maybe they got a physical, something going on with them, or maybe it's up here, it's in here, where they got something going on, but maybe they actually don't want to get well. Right? Maybe they've got like opportunities to get well, but they're just like, it's too much work. I'm kind of like, comfortable in my pain, in my suffering, which is just sounds weird, but hey, I'm sure I've had that in my life. I know I have actually. We're just like, things could be better, but I'm like, yeah, but I'm kind of comfortable the way I am. Right? They're just the way things are, even though they could be better. Right? And who doesn't want things to get better? But it's like, yeah, then I got to put forth effort, and I got to change, and this and that. So Jesus asks him the question first off, hey, do you want to get well? Which I think is just kind of cool. And so, he tells the man, hey, get up, pick up your mat and walk. At once the man was cured. At once, immediately, right then and there, at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. And so, Jesus kind of slips away. This happened, it was on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do any work. So immediately some of the Jewish leaders say to the man, hey, what are you doing? It's the Sabbath. What are you carrying your mat for? And he's like, well, the guy who healed me, he told me to. And they're like, what? Who told you? He's like, well, I don't know. And so then Jesus kind of finds him a little bit later. And I love this. He gives him a healing, but with a warning. Right? So he says, see, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you. And probably there's a guy who's been, he hadn't been able to walk for 38 years, and now something worse than that, like that sucked the last 38 years. But it's just, and him, who knows what his sinning was, if it was, just hanging out in this pagan area, colonnade type thing, who knows. But then, of course, he goes and he tells the Jewish leaders, hey, it was Jesus who made me well. And so, it's just funny, just the way Jesus does things. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, my Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working. Right? And then in different sections, he talks about, hey, if you had a son or a daughter who fell into a pit on the Sabbath, would you be like, hey, sorry, it's Sabbath. Maybe I'll drop some bread for you, but that might be work too. I'll just come back tomorrow. We'll help you out tomorrow. No, it's like, your son or daughter, or even your lamb or your donkey falls into a pit, you're going to get him out right then and there, because shoot, man, that's like that's your son or your daughter, or if it's a lamb or a donkey, whatever, like that's your livelihood. And so, and it's just kind of like this double way to upset the Pharisees, right? It's one, it's healed on the Sabbath, and then two, he kind of made himself almost equal with God, calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God, is what the text says. And just kind of a little note that I had here is, you can tell what is important to someone based on what gets them upset, right? Or excited, or just kind of brings their emotions out in general. But in here, it's what gets them upset. And so with the Pharisees, you got to realize, as maybe young kids, they kind of had the choice to, hey, I could be a Pharisee, or I could be a tax collector, or I could be a shepherd, I could be a farmer, I could be an architect, I could be a bricklayer, I could do all these things, but they chose their life, they chose to dedicate their life to studying the scriptures and becoming a teacher of the law, becoming a Pharisee, right, and knowing all there is to know about the Bible at that point, the Old Testament, right? And so they've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into knowing the scriptures, right? And by the way, it comes with all these little rules, like don't heal on the Sabbath, don't do this, don't do that, strain out your water when you drink it, just like a bunch of weird rules. And so here comes Jesus now, and he's just like, you know what, all that stuff, not all that stuff, but a lot of that stuff is going away, right? Healing on the Sabbath, that's okay now. You don't think it is, but it's okay. So he's basically come and just kind of taking their whole world and just flipping it upside down and just making kind of like a whole mess for them, right? And so with that, just basically their identity has been wrapped up in keeping all these rules, but in keeping all these rules, they forgot about God's love, about God's promises, right? Like they're the ones, and it's kind of Jesus talks about it, they're the ones who study the scriptures, who study the law of Moses, but Moses spoke about Jesus coming, and now Jesus is here, and they're missing him, It's like, dude, like, you're the ones out of everybody who should get this the most, but you're missing it. Like, what the heck? What's going on? And so, on the other side, if you look at Jesus, especially just, basically from verse, 16 all the way into the chapter, his identity, Jesus' identity, is always wrapped up in his Father, right? In doing his Father's will. Back to, I think it was chapter 4, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. He's always talking about his Father, about his Father's kingdom, about the kingdom is coming, and, and his relationship with his Father, right? And so even just, kind of skip down to 30 verse B, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me, talking about his Father. And so, 39 and 40, you study the scriptures diligently, because, it's Jesus talking to the Pharisees. You study the scriptures diligently because you think that in them you have eternal life. Just by knowing these, by memorizing these, you think, cool, I'm good, I memorized all this stuff, I got this. These are the very scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to have life. And he's just like, do you not see the irony there? Like, you're missing it. I'm here. You're missing me. And so, and there's just kind of just some cool stuff. Oh, here we go, just number 36. I have testimony weightier than that of John, for the works that the Father has given me to finish, the very works that I'm doing, testify that the Father has sent me. So he's like, you just saw me heal this guy. Isn't that enough? Right? Isn't that proof that I'm from God? Right? Nobody, and even Nicodemus said, nobody could do the works that you're doing unless God had sent him, unless God was with him, right? And so, just, kind of just interesting, because Jesus is sort of, kind of quoting himself a little bit, or just not quoting, but repetition is the mother of learning, right? So he kind of like repeats himself in a different way. So if you kind of skip back a little bit to verse 23. In this chapter, John chapter 5, says, whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. And then if you skip, I kind of made a note in my Bible. So there at John 5:23. Now go to John 3:36. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. Which again just kind of talks about his relationship with the Father. It's like, hey, if me and you are good, then you and the Father are good. If you're rejecting me, hey, you and the Father ain't good. I don't care how much about the Bible you know. I don't care how many rules you follow. If you're rejecting me, you're missing it. And so, and then just kind of another thing where kind of just a little bit of a callback, verse 41 and 42, he says, I do not accept glory from human beings, but I know you. I know you do not have the love of God in your hearts. And again, back to John 2:24 and 25. It's just good to kind of like, that looks similar. I think I read that a little bit. So John 2:24 and 25. Yeah, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He did not need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. Again, this kind of speaks to his identity. Like, his identity wasn't in the crowds. It wasn't in, impressing the Pharisees or even impressing his disciples or his followers. His identity is wrapped up in his Father, right? He's like, I no offense, like, y'all are kind of cool, but like, I know what's in your heart. I know you got some messed up stuff. I know you got that evil, twisted, bent, sinful nature, and you guys are great and I love you, but hey, I don't trust you guys. Basically what he's saying. Yeah, so there's, 45, 46, finish up the chapter. But do not think I will accuse you before the Father. Your accuser is Moses, right? This guy who wrote the law, and you're so diligent in studying it, and you're following the scriptures. Your accuser is Moses, the one on whom your hopes are set. If you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? It's just, Jesus is just like, he's just so good. He's so good, right? And of course, like, they may know, they may have the Bible memorized, but Jesus is the Word, In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus is the words of God, right? He is the Word incarnate, The Word made, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. He's like, I know this backwards, forwards, up ways, down ways, inside out, more ways than you can even imagine. You may have memorized it, but hey, if you look at this, and he's like, explain to them, y'all got it backwards, y'all missed it. You know, so it's just good, man. So anyway, guys, Jesus just gives us a great example, just how we should always strive to have that close relationship with the Father. And as you can see, the way we get that close relationship with the Father is being good with Him, right? Because the Father sent the Son to save us, and if we reject the Son, then we reject the one who sent Him. So accept Jesus, be good with the Father. So anyway, guys, I love you. Hope you're enjoying these, and we will see you tomorrow.